Good day everyone and welcome to another vlog. In this vlog I'll be covering a few things that God helped me finish this week, as well as a little bit of a surprise at the end. So first I'm starting off with the hieroglyphics. As you can see, I've managed to finish at least 2 hieroglyphic scenes this week. I did work on refining some of the textures and materials and all that kind of stuff throughout the week as well, but I'm going to focus on the hieroglyphics for now. Now, as you can see here, we have a lot around the scene itself. This took a while to make. This is not even the total amount of fine print hieroglyphics that there are. It really extends past the edges that you can see, but the focus here is on the scene, which is one of the 10 plagues, specifically the hail coming down on the servants that were left in the field. I did not add any livestock in this one, which is why I say, it can still be refined, but it's very good for the moment. Let me just zoom in for you guys so you can see it better. There you go. As you can see, it's quite a high resolution. The reason it's such a high resolution is because this has to go on a wall and you have to be able to stand against it or put the camera right up to it and it still look good. And this is where something called MIP, map generation, definitely comes in handy. What that means is it's like a level of detail for your maps, for your textures in Blender, which allows you to use super high resolution textures without taking the memory that would necessarily be required by such high resolution textures, and it speeds up your renders. I was quite opposed to using the MIP map generation, but I've noticed a very big difference in rendering times, especially with textures of this scale. Now obviously you can't use textures just as is at this resolution or just stick them on a surface. You have to edit them as well. And this is what it looks like on the building. As you can see, especially around the edges, that the hieroglyphics don't just stop dead. They're progressively erased to fit the wall, for lack of a better term. You can also see that it's reversed because I was on the other side of the building when I unwrapped it, the other side of the wall. So the symbols being reversed, at least in most cases, won't make a difference because this is all just gibberish in the first place. So again, if there is something written here that you find offensive, that's because you want to find it offensive. It's just gibberish, honestly. Now this one has got to be a personal favorite because it is one of the parables that Jesus told about the unforgiving servant in Matthew 18. I think it's Matthew 18, where the parable goes that the kingdom of God is like a certain king that wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And he specifically found that one servant, in this case this little dude over here, owed him, let's say, 15 million, simple example. So that's obviously something that he could not pay. And because he couldn't pay, the king was merciful to him and let him go. But he found another servant that owed him, say, like $20. And he wouldn't listen to reason. He wouldn't be merciful. He grabbed him by the throat and threatened him, and the guy dropped to the ground like this over here and said, "I will pay everything, just be patient," etc., just like he said to the king. And he refused. He had him thrown in prison until he would pay all that he owed. But guess who saw and heard it? Some of the other servants did, and they told the king. So the king was angry with him and threw him in prison as well, and until he would be able to pay all that he owed. Now, I don't exactly know how that would work, being thrown in prison until you could pay all that you owe, but maybe they did hard labor. I don't know. But yeah, it just goes to show, sow mercy and you'll reap mercy. Don't sow mercy and you will definitely reap judgment. So this is a very, very cool scene. I love the fact that God gave me the idea to use biblical narratives and stuff like that for the hieroglyphics. It's just absolutely awesome. Just love it. And this is the final texture. The good thing about these hieroglyphics and the way that they're colored is that when Blender, tiles the texture, you have to look really fine to find where in the world did it connect again. It's weird, but it works really well. I'm going to show you on the wall. On the project itself, you won't be able to tell where it's connected. There you go. Now you can see it on the wall itself. And it's somewhere down here where it's connected, but I can't seem to find it either. Like I said, it's really difficult to spot because of the way hieroglyphics work. I think it's in here. I think the seam goes here. You can see some of the symbols look a little odd, but the seam runs right along this wall right there as the little hand cursor moves. You can see it in here as well. But you really have to go and look for it, otherwise you don't notice it at all. Again, you can see that the hieroglyphics have been cut off to fit the wall nice and properly. When they came close in some areas, I just left them there. But if they touch this horizontal line over here with the rendering, the mortar, I would cut it off if it crossed that line, as you can see over here as well. There's our little Suzanne over there. Now, obviously, I haven't unwrapped this side wall over here yet. That's why it looks like kids got to it with a bunch of crayons. But yeah, I still want to add more of that brownish, dusty color to the buildings. But I have to say, I don't think that there was much of that in those days, because I think they cleaned it often. I think they really liked whitewashing stuff. I don't know, but I don't think there was as much of that brownish color. I think that would be more related to the normal Egyptian life, though I think their buildings would have been white as well. It may be mostly in Goshen. I don't know. I'm just going to have to use discretion. So anyway, these are just a few renders. Now this is an interesting one. When I went back to the reference, I saw that there were, forgive me if I say this wrong, cartouches, which is the Egyptian way of writing names. It's like a bunch of hieroglyphics in an oval kind of reed shape, where they would use that to separate out, like I just said, names. I think it applies to places as well, but I can't say for sure. I know very little about the hieroglyphic writing system. I do know a small amount about numbers, but I would be useless if I were dropped in ancient Egypt. I would be considered illiterate. Anyway, so this texture over here kind of doubled up on itself because of the fact that the original texture was not tileable. I'm going to show you the original texture. As you can see, it does not have the reeds in it, but you can also see when you look at the points that it's not 100% aligned. The problem with it not being 100% aligned is when you have Blender duplicating it with its over itself, you get this uneven edge over here, and you get this uneven edge over there, and it creates this double bump kind of thing on the seam where they come together, and it looks really ugly. And I tried fixing it by simply UV unwrapping it to that edge and UV unwrapping it to that edge and letting it repeat itself. But the problem is Blender doesn't consider it like that. Blender doesn't consider your UV unwrapping the edges of your texture. It uses the actual edges of your texture. That's one thing you need to watch out for. So God had to help me create a tileable texture, which is what you can see right now. And this was just colored with a color ramp and, of course, some normal influence added. As you can also see, I did not use cartouches. I just used a reed shape. Another thing I also did was I redistributed the pillars over here. Now you can't see it over here, but what I did was I still had them rotated on quarters to create variation, but instead of using pick random, I set it to not pick random to make sure that every pillar next to each other is different and you don't get a super quick double up like you do over here. What I really want to do though is make enough of these kinds of scenes to make every pillar different, so that this one has a different one, this one has a different one, this one has a different one, and this one has a different one. And then have them be rotated so that you have at least 8 different looking pillars. That would be really, really awesome. But in order to do that, I would have to make more using this little block scene, and then I can just replace the texture, which would be ideal. Now, another thing that I worked on is obviously characters, because you can see that we have a bit of a difference in characters over here. In order to make sure that Pharaoh's court has enough, for lack of a better term, witnesses, when Aaron and Moses come in to stand up against Pharaoh to free the people, there has to be servants. Now, last time I showed you guys another female servant, but remember I told you guys that I felt her head was too small? Even though you could fit 8 of her head into her body from top to bottom, the feet were still an extra piece longer, so her head was too small. Obviously, that means we have to make another one. So I had made 2 female servants this week. This is one, just showing you 2 expressions over here. I didn't really go all out rendering expressions for this one, but I had to for the other one, even though this one's expressions are finished. What I do want to do still, though, is possibly add that yellow gold ring to either one of them. So this is the updated version for servant number 2. As you can see, I just made some slight modifications to her face. Lips are more narrow, little thicker on the bottom lip. Eyes are a little bit thinner. Little line on the forehead. And of course, little line over the eyes. Eyes are green. And the hair is shorter. As well as the outfit. The outfit is also different. You want to get it as different as possible. So just scrolling through the expressions over here. I also made the corners of the mouth sharper when she smiles. The best way to do this is to just tuck some of those corners of the mouth into the top. You don't have to go like super crazy with it. You just need to make sure that it's tucked enough that Freestyle would see it as a corner. You can see that there's still quite a bit of roundness for the shading. Just in case you guys are wondering, I don't do normal editing for these characters. If that wasn't obvious, just letting you know, I don't do any normal editing for it. I do some sculpting. God insisted that I try using sculpting to smooth out some surfaces, especially for chibi-like characters. And it especially works on the nose area over here because MakeHuman tends to have an edge that kind of pushes out against the nose over here and the nostril and creates a little bit of a line there that you don't want there. So you just use Sculpt and you select Smooth. set it to a low setting, and just brush those edges nice and clean. That's all you need to do. Now the last part is a little bit deceptive in the sense that it looks like it was just played back slowly, but actually the last part is the original frame rate that it was rendered at. Now, I didn't finish rendering the animation. In the finished animation, you still are left with a tree stump and it's kind of billowing smoke. I mean, it was just struck by light. But yeah, I just don't have the time to do that with the vlog and all that kind of stuff. My PC is just not fast enough yet. But definitely less particles, as you can see over here, way too dense. I think that's what caused the shadow flashing problem. And I think it's also what caused the fact that I couldn't finish rendering it as well. So let me quickly take you through the progression so you guys can see it more slowly. So if you were to go through it, you see lightning strike it. The electricity courses through the branches, just like that, flickers a little bit. And then the explosion happens from about this area. Now, I have a suspicion about the bright spots on the tree. I think this may be because of the mask, number one, and number two, because of the Hemi lights that I typically have in my files, but I don't necessarily have them on all the layers, so that can also affect it. So it comes down to compositing, just to put it bluntly. Okay, and then it's just the same thing that I showed you guys on the actual lightning and electricity tutorial. You just create the star type shape and you make that expand, and on the origin of this expansion you place some fairly dense particles that can push out quite quickly. Now obviously mine pushed out way too fast, but you can definitely do a much better job of it if you take your time. This was done in pretty much a rush. Now, the way the light for the smoke was done was to simply turn on the translucency of the smoke particles. That gave the smoke particles the ability to at least emit some form of light when the light was like extraordinarily bright. I think it was like 200 or something like that. That also gave me a little bit more compositing to work with to just give that extra glow. But as soon as I was able to turn it off, I turned it off. Speed is so important, but as it turns out, it wasn't even that caused the speed problems. So here's another example of not having the Hemi lights turned on every layer. As you can see, it's pitch black. It's supposed to have environment lighting, just like over there. And then it pretty much just dissipates, just like that. Now the lightning itself goes like this. It may be a little long for the animation, I would admit, but I really do like the idea of slowing it down, like really, really slow, and just watching it course down, and then boom goes the tree. It's easy to see how something like this could set a field on fire. I mean, seriously. And ironically, Blender does have the ability to do particles on particles, so you can set the tree on fire the second it goes kablooey like that. Very cool. So that is pretty much it for the tree exploding. I'm super thankful God helped me do this week because I love the result. It's absolutely stunning. A quick tip on how to achieve this glow. I use relative blur and I use size 7 for the big glow, and I use a size 1 for the smaller glow. So you apply twice and you use add. That gives you a proper anime type style blur glow. Just love that. Could definitely do with a little bit more styling, and of course the particles need fine tuning because all these little pieces flying off and the flickering is just terrible. If God allows me to use this for the actual project, blowing up a tree, which, makes logical sense to have the fields on fire. Whether the lightning strikes the field directly or whatever, I don't know. But, if he does allow me to do this, I will definitely spend a lot more time refining this. For example, I could use a stronger displacement to have more electricity, thinner electricity. And, of course, spend more time refining the particles so that we don't have this flickering nonsense. Which I really believe just comes down to having too many particles in one small space. This was just a quick video just to see what it looks like if you were to enter through this side door and look up the staircase and see all the hieroglyphics. So it's a very short video, but I hope you guys like it. Oh yeah. See, again, even though it's like really close up, you're not really sure, okay, where is that line, where it merges. If I look at this right here, I'm still not sure. I remember it was about this level. Yeah, there it is. Oh, you really have to look finely for it. You can see there's the line. So I'm just going to play that again. And that's it for this vlog. Hope you guys enjoy it. I hope the few tips I've given you guys help you in your projects. Have a great one and God bless you.